When things aren't going the way the government wants to, they often keep themselves very busy looking through the tools in their toolbox to introduce new regulations and policies that, in theory, will make the Canadian economy and more specifically the real estate market more affordable. But these regulations and policies don't always work out the way that they were intended to. And sometimes the government will actually acknowledge this and make changes. In today's video, I'll be discussing the recent foreign home buyer ban that the government implemented on January 1st of 2023, which is aimed at curbing demand. So the initial results were not what they were anticipated to be, at least from the policymakers that were the ones that came up with the plan. A lot of the country's leading experts in the real estate industry and top economists, who also seem very eager to move the needle on affordability, actually predicted the reverse effects that the foreign homebuyer ban may have had. I'm Brandon O'Quinn, and I'm a real estate agent in the Quinte region. I also service the surrounding areas. And if at any point you have any questions for me or want to chat about the market, you can book a call with me by clicking on the first link in the description. And if you find value in today's video, all I ask is that you give the video a like, as it really helps push out this video to more viewers just like you. So the foreign homebuyer ban actually isn't a new concept. New Zealand is a great example of a peer country that tried to combat their growing unaffordability in the same way. However, experts there say it actually didn't work out as planned. Despite the foreign buyer ban in New Zealand, house prices continued to soar, and they've only recently been reined in by the interest rate increases they've seen in their country as well. So the first thing I want to point out is that non-Canadians own a very minimal share of Canadian real estate, so it actually seemed to be more of a political policy rather than an economic policy. A lot of the public seems to have been convinced over the past few years that one of the major factors that was leading to Canada's growing unaffordability was foreign buyers and foreign money, rather than what was actually doing it, which is low inventory and low interest rates. I think the Canadian government had a lot of pressure to do something, and it seems like it was probably easier to pick on the foreign buyer as a target. So what went wrong? The term residential property was used in the policy, but that not only includes what you're probably already thinking, detached homes, condos, townhouses, but also vacant land or inhabitable land that was zoned as residential or mixed use. And a lot of what developers purchase to build homes on in Canada is the same type of vacant or inhabitable land. And if these developers were partly foreign owned or relied on foreign equity to get the project started, they were in a situation where they couldn't continue to buy this land to build on. So because of this, many purpose-built developments, which in my view are probably the best tool at combating the growing unaffordability, were actually scrapped or put on hold. Ultimately, the act and its regulations created a lot of confusion and unintended consequences for the real estate industry here in Canada, including some of these developers that were forced to either cancel their plans of building or put them on hold. The good news is on Monday, January 27th, some of what was in the act has actually been amended, and the extensive list of exemptions that were already in place have actually been expanded. I'm going to share an article with you guys that talks about some of these exemptions that have been expanded. And this was an article in the Real Estate magazine. The title reads, Canada amends foreign homebuyer ban regulations. So the ones I'm going to talk about, there's a few of them here, but two of them really stand out to me. And the first one is exception for development purposes. So there's now an exception for development purposes. This exception allows non-Canadians to purchase residential property for the purpose of development. The amendments also extend the exception currently applicable to publicly traded corporations under the Act to publicly traded entities formed under the laws of Canada or a province and controlled by a non-Canadian. The prohibition no longer applies to vacant land either. The prohibition previously applied to all land zoned for residential and mixed use, but it now only applies to developed residential properties. Vacant land zoned for residential and mixed use can now be purchased by non-Canadians and used for any purpose by the purchaser, including residential development. So this is definitely promising to see, and I have to give kudos to the Canadian government, because when people are wrong, it takes a lot of courage to stand up, admit it, and then do the right thing. And in this case, the government has, by making the changes that were clearly needed Maybe if the Canadian government were to lean on some of this industry expert advice or from, top economists that may know a thing or two, we wouldn't have to go a couple months to see the reverse effects before actually making the changes. And personally, I haven't seen any buyers or sellers been affected from this, but being in a lot of groups with other realtors across the country, I have heard some buyers and agents and everyone involved that weren't so lucky. There was one instance, it was a Facebook group I'm a part of that I actually read earlier today, that the gentleman was representing a seller and the buyers who purchased a property didn't realize that they fell under the foreign buyer ban. And they actually ended up having to walk away from the deal, losing $10,000 of their deposit. And now it turns out because of these changes, they would have been able to proceed with the purchase after all. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this instance, as well as any other instances of people that were affected by the foreign buyer ban who weren't able to buy a property, but now because of the changes are able to. And hopefully, some of these foreign owned development companies who decided to scrap projects or put projects on hold will now decide to move forward with them, ultimately increasing the supply of housing in Canada. So, this is one tool in the toolbox with a government that has plenty of tools. Hopefully, we draw on some of the right ones and put them into place in the right way so that we can really start making a positive impact and allowing more Canadians to purchase homes by making them more affordable. We certainly have a long way to go, but if we have a government that is willing to accept responsibility, to admit when they're wrong, and make the required changes, that'll definitely allow us to be in much better shape. And I think it's a great example that we all need to remain flexible to our preconceptions because what we expect to happen isn't always exactly how things play out. And to have the ability to reflect, seek expert advice, and make changes when they're needed is a fantastic thing. Thanks for watching my video, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.